Hello all and welcome to what I hope is a very insightful and inspiring webinar for women who are currently navigating their different fundraising options. And I also just wanted to give a big shout out to the hustlers out there. No Zoom fatigue for you. So we really appreciate you joining us here on this Thursday morning. For those who I don't know out there, my name is Julie and I'm the Executive Director over here at Ladies Who Launch, a nonprofit organization that exists to support and empower female and non-binary founders as they launch and grow their businesses. And today we are all about empowerment. To set the stage, the data isn't great out there for women founders. And unfortunately, this is a story as old as time. But I'm going to come at this with such a place of energy and excitement because through open discussions like these with real founders from diverse women who have successfully blazed their own trail, we believe that together we can change these stats in our collective favor. So welcome to the panel, and I'm just going to turn it over to them to say a quick hello and just provide an introduction to their business and perhaps even one word that came to mind after they first saw the DocSend data results. Asya, I'm going to start with you.
Hi, I'm Asya Bradley. I'm the co-founder and COO of First Boulevard. We are a digitally native neobank that's focused on generating wealth for Black America. Allies are 100% welcome though, too. So first word, when I thought, honestly, it was two words, same old, same old. So
yeah, so we're going to change that. Max, let's intro on your side.
Hey everyone, I'm Max. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Caribu. In a white moment, where we bring families together through virtual play dates. So you can draw and play together and read in an actual interactive video call with thousands of books in 10 different languages. And we've got customers in over 200 countries and territories. My one word after I saw the report was pissed.
It's a good one. That was a good one. Cassie?
Hello, and I'm Cassie Pallison. I head up DocSend's research efforts and content and comms. And DocSend is a document analytics platform. And one of our most common use cases is founders using the platform during fundraising. So to track VC engagement on their pitch deck. So that's some of what we'll go into today and the data gathering that we've been able to do from across our community and within our product. I think, unfortunately, no surprise is the word.
All right, we've got pissed, same old, and no surprise. Those are not the positive words, but we're going to change that. So let's start with you, Cassie, because we've only got 40 minutes to change the world over here. So this is the second year of the data for DocSend. And so I remember it felt like yesterday, but here we are a year later. We had this kickoff webinar with DocSend for the first year. And obviously, through the pandemic, lots changed. But I'd love for you to just give us an overview for those who have not seen the data yet, and maybe just provide some of the key insights that DocSend has pulled out for their second year in research.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm going to just share a few slides for those visual folks out there, because the data is a bit dense, but super interesting. So we have, as I mentioned, surveying our community of startups and coupled with our product data to be able to look on both sides of the table on VC and founder engagement on pitch deck. So we've released quite a few research reports throughout the year. Right now, we're talking about our most interesting cut of data, probably, which are the conscious or unconscious biases that happen in startup fundraising. So to dive a bit into it, this is the second year we've done this cut of data. And when you look at the comparison 2019 to 2020, the theme is kind of two steps forward, one step back. Fundraising odds for founding teams with minority members improved by 42%, but unfortunately the gap widened pretty significantly for all female founding teams. In 2019, we had the gap between male and female be about 50%, and it widened to 70% this year. There's a lot that happened for all of us in the last year. I think we'll talk through that probably on what these numbers mean, but how much less? So here's a look at the breakdown of founding teams amount raised based on gender and race. And you'll see that in 2019 and 2020, females, whether they were with minorities or without minorities on their founding team, raised significantly less than teams with males on their founding team. Additionally, all female teams, secured much less meetings. Raising less and securing less meetings could be coupled together. They averaged about 26 meetings when all male teams secured an average of 56 meetings.
And real quick, a question came in on the sample size for startups.
Yes, this was around over 200 startups.
Amazing. Okay, so less money, less meetings. Wow. Well, here we go. Moving into the areas I'd love to just dive in here. I think you might have one more slide on this, which is where investors spent their time comparative to all male versus all female teams.
Yeah, absolutely. So now we'll look at investors' time page by page on slide decks. So what we do is collect hundreds of pitch decks and analyze sections within that pitch deck and see trends of where time is spent. So this is a dense chart, but I kind of circled where we should look. So if you look at the decks of all male teams, so if we're looking at the teal bars, investors spent notable time on fundraising goal and financials, showing that investors are confident or have high intent or interest in those all male teams. No investor spends a significant amount of time on the fundraising goal or ask slide without considering that startup. Alternatively, when you look at the purple bars, particularly the two that are circled, you'll see that investors spent much more notable time scrutinizing the business of all female teams, focusing on slides like problem and business model, perhaps trying to validate if the problem was worth solving or if the business model was sound. One last thing I'll note that I found interesting, and we had talked about this on our prep call, where the placement of the founding, the team slide is in the deck. And if there is unconscious bias of seeing that team slide. We did show, usually the pitch deck is shared over email first, and that's when this is reviewed and analyzed to secure that meeting. And we found that surprisingly, that team slide on the majority of our startup decks was in the latter third of the deck. So they are, maybe they know who the founder is or not, but at many times are not seeing that team slide with those headshots until later in the deck, but somehow there still is these discrepancies.
Well, we can't see each other, everyone who's joined in here, but I'm imagining some eye rolls are happening as I just saw that come in on the chat. So I feel the same. I had to hold my face in to look, but really I was doing, So I guess, Cassie, with all of this data, any insights or takeaways actionable for the women listening out there today that they can do to either improve kind of the layout of their deck or just provide different kind of financial information to help them get a leg up and get that meeting? And you're muted. There we go. Coming on back in.
Yes. I think one thing is to make sure you're putting the meat and potatoes up front, if you will. We see that investors spend only 3 minutes on these decks, roughly 3 to 4 minutes. And so they're just scrolling through, and the drop-off rate is high. So really making sure that you have your unique value up front, whether that is your market size, your competitors, and how you're different. I think that's key to piquing that interest early so that they make it through that deck. Also, Russ, our CEO, says that, if your pitch isn't resonating, is it simple enough? Sometimes people try to overcomplicate their stories just in order to show they're solving a large problem. But, really just simplifying it, and it'll speak for itself if it's a great idea. And then, with our discussion today being around females and female founding teams, don't assume the investor knows your industry. Many female founders are creating companies that maybe solve a need they have or their own experience. Not always the case, but if it is something, look at the makeup of the standard VC. They might not get your industry, right? And so make sure that you're just stepping back and simplifying it for them so that they can really grasp that.
Yeah, and do you think that perhaps leads to the data here showing the problem where maybe they don't grasp that problem. And so they're trying to spend more time while flipping right on through the financials.
Right. It could for sure.
Amazing. Anything else that you want to pull out, looking at kind of from last year's data to this year's data, that can help give our women entrepreneurs a leg up?
I think that's the gist of it, but this report is 15 pages, rich full of data, also looking at more minority influence as well. So we will share that full report. I can put it in the chat now, but also you guys will get it in follow up with this recording. So I will let you guys dive in deeper on your own.
Okay, so with that, thank you, Cassie. And we're just going to turn it over to the discussion here of two amazing founders who were able to successfully raise over 5 million each for their businesses. So Max, I want to kick over to you. You said during our catch-up call, this industry is not built for you. So I'd love for you to explain what you meant by that, and maybe how when you hit that aha moment, that could have shifted your strategy as you raise capital.
Yeah, I think I always come into things thinking that they're more merit-based, or I think, oh, if I just perform, and I don't know why, because like in every stage of life as a woman, you're like, no, I have to overperform or outperform or do 10 times better. So I don't know why I was like, oh, it'll be fine. And it's also, you kind of look at the statistics. I was making this joke to a friend and I was like, this is actually really real. Like, imagine someone comes to you and says, here's a flight from Miami to San Francisco, and there's a 2% chance you're going to make it. Like, do you want on this flight? And like, us women and people of color founders are like, first class ticket, please. Like, yes. Like,
I'll pay for myself, and I'll bring my own beverage.
I'll bring my girls. Like, yeah, like it's horrible. The statistics are horrible. And if you really were to pay it, like, I guess I didn't pay attention to them because I was like, yeah, this sounds awesome. I'm totally going to crush this. I'm going to be an outlier. And I think, you start to come to terms that this infrastructure, right, this institutional system was not built for you. It was not built for women to feel safe. It was not built for women or people of color to have access. It's kind of like when I went to business school and I completely didn't fit in, right? It's just, there's rules and language, a way to present yourself, a way to show up. There's costs associated with fundraising that some people can't afford. You as a woman are put into so many different situations that are, I shouldn't even be laughing. Like, it's so frustrating, the things that I think especially women have to go through in the fundraising process, which again is unacceptable. It's unacceptable. And all I want to do is run my damn business. I want to have an amazing business that hires amazing, people of color and women, and we serve families across the globe. We make the world a better place. And like, why do I have to constantly feel like I'm under attack or being harassed or not good enough, or my metrics aren't that great to be able to grow my business? Like, it's just, we had a prep call and I was like, I'm going to try not to vent.
This is part informational, but then part venting therapeutic as well.
Thank you, everyone.
But I think that really stuck to me as kind of just an understanding when you go in and that 2% and always thinking of the flight. Asya, I'm going to build on kind of what you said coming out of what Max said, which was, all I want to do is build my damn business. And I thought you had something very interesting to say as well, which was, I'm going to make this VC a lot of money. So I think that perspective might have shifted the mindset a little bit as you went in. So I'd love to maybe touch on your experience building off of what Max said. How did you think about how I'm going to make a VC a lot of money, and then how that mindset maybe drove who you brought in as your investment team?
Yeah, for sure. So I think this is part of, we need to understand our own self-worth, right? And understand sort of, we know how badass we are. We know that our idea is great. We know that we're fully capable of doing anything that any other, white cisgendered male can do. And so even though we weren't involved in, Max, what you were saying, I love what you said, like, we were not part of the conversation when it came to building this infrastructure. And the founding journey for me actually really came from not feeling like I was really being my true productive self within existing companies. And so I realized that if I wanted to see a company that I was going to be really proud of, I would just have to go out and build it in my own way. And the studies all show that when you have more women in the leadership team, when you have women on boards, that company is a lot more profitable in the long run.
Yes.
So when you follow the data, you follow the studies, not just your gut. My gut always told me that too, but then you start digging into it, you realize that studies have already proven this, that representation matters. And so when you have that situation, then you realize your company is actually going to make somebody a lot of money. So who do you want on that journey to actually benefit from your success, right? And that's where you start thinking, okay, who are those VCs that I want to deal with every single day? Who do I want to work with? Who do I want to partner with? So whenever I talk about raising, I don't even talk about them as VCs, or I don't talk about how much money. I think about capital partners. And these are going to be long-term relationships, because once they're on your cap table, they're on your cap table, and you want to be able to be proud of that cap table. And so when we went out looking for our capital partners, we did a lot of research. So we looked at their partner teams, we looked at their associates, we looked at their principals, because that also shows you, we all know that most of the partners were of a certain demographic, but then you want to see that they're at least making some effort, even at the principal and the associate level, to see that there's going to be some growth within that VC firm, longer term. So you look at that makeup of their team overall. And then based on that, we also thought about, who do we want on our board eventually? All right. And that's a really key thing. And then you want to know if these people have already been about the work, about representation within their own organization, then you're not going to get that really crappy term sheet from them, where you end up losing your business in a couple of rounds, right? And they're actually going to be supporting you as a founder. So those are the main things that I really looked for.
I'd love to just maybe, before we talk about crappy term sheets, let's just dive into I'm always about the action, right? So maybe talking through who you're most proud of as part of your capital partners, and where women can go find strong capital partners that would have that diversity across their own organizations.
There are some incredible ones out there. So the ones on our cap table, super proud of them. We always brag about them. Anthemis is incredible. It was actually such a breath of fresh air, because I remember going through all of these calls, and it was always a specific demographic that showed up, right, to all the calls. And then I was the diversity, and my co-founder, Donald, who's a Black man, we basically would be there, and it was just us, and then everybody who looked the same.
You're let's talk about Black banking.
Right? And so then suddenly we get on a call with Anthemis, and it's all women show up on this call, and women of color. And then you're oh, wow, this actually exists out there. So you've got Anthemis, which is, Barclays. P72 was incredible. So P72 didn't have the representation necessarily, but they totally got it, which was really cool. And so really, when we spoke with them, it was from day zero, where they were oh my God, what you're building is absolutely necessary in this world. And so they showed a true allyship. And that's really important. So we don't want to discount allyship. So don't just look on appearances, but look for those allies out there, because they are out there. Will Kohler, for example, from Lightspeed, is another one that you should all hit up. He's going to probably regret that I did that, but he's incredible. Right? And then on P72, we've got Trip Schreiner, we have Adam Carson, we have Travis, just an incredible team. And then we also have Harlem Capital, which is amazing. I just, they're just incredible. Love what they're doing. There's 68 Ventures, which is Black women owned. There was another one that just came out, and I'm happy to kind of add them all in later on, but they just raised a $50 million fund to focus on Black entrepreneurs. And then, of course, Pendulum Holdings. So Pendulum is this new, small, sort of niche, secretive kind of VC that is it's just another one of those things where it's a husband and wife team. I think they were from Chicago originally, but they're based in the LA. But again, one of those teams where you get on a call and it's all diversity in front of you. And those are the things that kind of make me feel really good and sort of hopeful about what's to come. And of course, everybody knows about Arlen Hamilton, and then there's Mac as well.
Amazing. Super helpful. We'll be writing those down and the secrets out for Pendulum. Max, I just want to turn it to you because you had an incredible story on your latest round where I believe it's all women, or you got a very strong diverse base as well. So maybe kind of giving them some shout outs and also how that was important to you as part of this latest raise.
Yeah. Well, I think it's all, and I think Asya made such a good point, right? It's like you also, especially in the beginning when you have almost no leverage, you a lot of times, and a lot of people who are diverse or underestimated or underrepresented on the funding side don't hold the power either, right? So in the beginning, lots of power structures and struggles. So in the beginning, actually, our lead he's a white male, and I was on a panel talking about what it's like to be a woman founder. And as you can imagine, I was just as saucy on this panel about what it's like to be a woman founder. And it was to all of these VCs. And pretty much at the end, I was like, well, none of these mainly guys are going to invest in me because I just, showed you what you're going to deal with if you invest in us. And this guy came, he's an angel. He has a family office, and he came up to me and he gave me his card and he was like, we should definitely talk. I'm interested. And I was like, okay, if you could handle that, then this is going to be amazing. You're going to be my partner. And he's been the lead in every single one of our rounds. He's now our board member. So I think Asya's point about making sure that you're also looking at the allies, because unfortunately, when you don't have the power, you're usually trying to take power from someone who has it. So you need to look for people who are willing to share that power and give up power to give you power. And that's across race, class, privilege, sex, gender, all those things. So I've always wanted to make sure that my cap table was diverse. But you, again, don't always have the power to do that, right? When you're fundraising from a place of like, necessity and your numbers aren't where they need to be, or the industry, whatever, it's a summer, you don't always get to choose your investors. But last year we were very lucky and fortunate. We 10x the company. And so we were able to kind of choose who we wanted on the cap table. And in the last round, it was led by a Latina, and the whole round was made up of women or Black men. So I was really excited and back to Asya's point, right? It's like, who am I going to make more wealthy? Who am I going to, and it's a cyclical power system, right? So the people that do well with Caribu, right? When we sell for billions, and then they then can go back to their teams and their funds and say, look, see what happens when we invest in a Latina from Miami, like, we all are successful, and that gives them leverage and power within their fund to be able to do that more.
Yeah, so then we can lift other women from Miami up as well and across the world. I just want to kind of touch on that point because we hear this all the time at Ladies Who Launch, which is, and I'm looking at the data that Cassie presented, which is women raise less money. And so they go in thinking, I want to raise 500, but thank you so much. I'll take 120,000, or I want to raise 5 million. And it's like, they get to 800 and it's like, all right, fine, let's just go. But the problem with that is it puts you in this always fundraising cycle, and you're always getting less than you need. And then you're not being able to pay yourself or your teams or actually go accomplish the mission that you want to go do. It's not like you lied when you thought like, oh, I need 1 million. Like that was what you needed to go build the tools, but you settle for, 250,000. And so Max and Asya, I'd love, you guys set out on this journey. It sounds like you both got what you wanted out of your capital partners there. And so how did that go? Like, what was your experience? And Asya, I'll start with you and then kick over to Max.
Yeah, I mean, our experience, I think, was anomalous. So I do want to preface it with that. And I think, again, Max and I are the exception, right? And I'm not one of those believers of like getting up here and going, if I did it, you all can do it. It's just so easy and just 24 hours a day. And you can just, just optimize every single one of those hours. So that's not me. So I'm not going to give you that kind of a pep talk. A lot of the things that happened during the raise were a surprise, a pleasant surprise, because in our case, what we thought was we were just going to bootstrap it. So Donald and I kind of focused on the product that we wanted to build. We put together, the team, and we just started getting to work. And we really, really thought like, okay, we are so into this that if we have to, we will bootstrap it. But again, Donald and I were in the position that we could have. if we needed to. Right. And then we also like, I'm a lot older. And so I've been, in the world for a longer time. I've got some money saved up. And so, there's a difference. And this is what you see. I'm not one of those 20-year-old white guys who dropped out of college that, somebody just gave them, tens of millions of dollars and said, go, build this amazing product. I am almost 50 years old, right? I'm a mom of 3. I'm an immigrant to this country, dealing with infertility issues and trying to have another baby, all of this stuff at the same time. And so I am absolutely not who people would invest in, right? And I'm LGBTQ. So put all the isms in there, and that's me in a package, right? All the isms you can throw in there, that's me. So we were very pleasantly surprised because we kind of went out there and we did do a lot of work. We were very meticulous in terms of what we put in the deck, but I will give you guys a hint. Don't send the deck out in advance. Do not send it out in advance. Have a little blurb that tells something about you. If you already have some cheerleaders, people that have already been supportive of you, and they're kind of well-known in the space, put a little quote or like a little testimonial from them in there. Show that you have some support from notable people, allies, for example, that have the power, like Max said. They're people that have the power. So put their little quote in that blurb. And then have, people, and I hate the idea that you need to have warm intros, but let's face it, there's so many people reaching out to these VCs that you've got to be able to cut through that noise. So network the crap out of yourself, go and find these people, reach out to me. I'm happy to help as well. But find those people that are willing to help you to get those warm intros. And then when you're actually going to get that meeting with them, make sure you research them really well, right? Look at their portfolio companies, see if any of them conflict with what you're doing, see if any of them, are going to add to your company. Because a lot of the VCs really want to know, if I invest, can I even give something to this company beyond the money? You don't want the dummy dollars. You want smart capital partners that are going to help take you to the next level. So we started getting reached out by people. We kind of reached out as well, did some cold outreach. We thought we were going to raise about $2 to $3 million. And then when everything happened, people started talking to each other. They really liked the concept. And again, everything with the pandemic happening, the murder of George Floyd, it all sort of really kind of created this perfect storm. So remember, again, circumstance is really important to your raise. The timing, I always say, you got to answer the questions. What is the problem you're trying to solve? Why are you the one to solve this problem? What makes you the one that should be solving it? And then also, why is now the time to solve the problem? I'm sure if I had tried to do this 5 years ago, I probably would not have had this much interest. So we ended up with an oversubscribed $5 million seed round. We had the likes of Gabrielle Union as an angel investor, on our cap table as well. Jameer Jackson, Sandy from C2FO. So all these amazing people kind of rallied around us and showed us their support. Clay Wilkes from Galileo is one of our advisors. So really, we kind of just spoke to everybody. And that's the other thing that I kind of mentioned during our warm-up chat was talk to everyone, take every meeting. It's 15, 20 minutes of your time. And I would say schedule 15, 20 minutes, not 30-minute meetings, never 1-hour meetings, but schedule these 15, 20-minute meetings, get to know people, talk to as many people as you can. Because even if there's an investor that doesn't invest in you, if they like you, and you make a connection with them, they will connect you with others.
Well, I think we need to just cut all of that into my warm up, my wake up, with my morning coffee every single morning. Asya, that was very powerful. Lots of good nuggets. We'll be pulling them into a recap there. So thank you. Max, what can you build on there from your, come on. I want to hear how you feel about warm intros, and I want to hear about how you felt about hitting your raise goal.
Well, just a quick comment on the amount raised. I've never raised the amount that I wanted. I've always had to raise less, or I've been told to raise less by women as well. And I think that's another thing that we like, that I learned very early on and we need to talk about, which is, there are women at the table, but it doesn't mean that you're going to get a fair shake from them either, right? Or for people of color across the table. They're trying to get themselves more power as well. And you don't always necessarily fit how they get there. And one of the things that I learned very early on was that there are two types of questions that founders get asked. There's promotional and preventative. A promotional question is when you are asked like, oh, tell me about the market and how big it is and how fast and far we can go. And preventative is, well, what's your monthly, recurring revenue or something very specific to suss out some kind of risk so that the investor can say, oh, I knew I shouldn't invest in this. This is too risky. So in the beginning, I had to get very good at hearing a preventative question and answering with a promotional answer. So I knew what they were trying to do is they were trying to see like where I was today. And I was like, no, actually, let's talk about where I'm going to be in 12 months, which is what you're doing with the men that you're talking to. You're giving them the opportunity to be like, oh, well, if you just give me this $10 million, I can go do all these things. All right, well, that's going to be my answer too. Like, I'm not going to tell you where I am off of my scraps. I live paycheck to paycheck running this business. I can't hire the types of people that I need on my team. We have built Caribu and 10x the company with 2.5 engineers. Like it's kind of unacceptable. My book is going to be called I Did It in Heels, Backwards, and with Less Money, because that is like exactly the story of what we again have to do. So I think when you're thinking about fundraising, first of all, the number one question is, do you need to? And I love that Asya was like, maybe we won't. And especially with that statistic that I gave you, right? Of like, you have a 2% chance of this flight making it to San Francisco. Like, do you want to take outside capital? But know that if you don't take outside capital, you can't run as fast as the boys. And so therefore you're going to be held. And that's the frustrating part, right? Is like, I'm given these scraps. And then it's like, well, why didn't you grow as fast as blah, blah, blah down the street? And I'm like, that's a great question. Like, let's do that. And even when I did grow faster than blah, blah, blah down the street, it was still like, well, we need to see more. It's just, and so I guess for anyone who is underestimated, who's listening to this is like, I think the first thing Asya and I would tell you is like, this sucks. This is hard for everybody. It really actually, if you're a first-time founder, this is super rough. If you are a person of color, if you're underestimated in some kind of way, if you have any visible risk that an investor can see, like it's not fun. And I actually like fundraising. I come across as someone who doesn't, but I actually really enjoy going up to people and being like, yo, I got something really phenomenal here. You want in? Like that to me is so awesome. As you said, like these are partners. These are people that I call on when things are great and when things are not great. So really being thoughtful about that, reaching out to as many people as possible. The best thing you can do is have an oversubscribed interest in what you're building, and then be able to choose, who gets to be on your capital stack. And then the last thing I'll say is, think creatively about how to fund your company. Obviously, the number one way to fund your company is revenue and sales, right? That's actually, if you go back to how business actually runs when you're not a tech startup, you need to cover your costs with something, which a lot of times hopefully is sales. So sales is number one, right? Don't be scared of actually going out there and getting sales from your customers. And your customers are the best people to give you feedback, not investors, unfortunately. And then are you bankable or backable, right? So are you a service-based business that should not be wasting your time going after VC, right? Or are you, a company that should not be going to VC, but should be going to something else? And the other last thing is there's a lot of really amazing ways to fund your business nowadays, like equity crowdfunding. So back to these horrible predatory term sheets, we received one in 2019. I was going out to raise the second part of my seed, got this incredibly horrendous term sheet, literally almost had to take it because we were coming into the summer season. And I always say you fundraise in the college semesters. So fall to November, right? So like September to November. After Thanksgiving, you're not raising. Sorry, I don't care who you are. And then February to like June. And so we were starting to get into the summer. We were like, oh my God, we might have to take this $500,000 term sheet, which, by the way, if we don't hit these milestones, like we lose the business in 12 months. And thankfully I had just learned about equity crowdfunding. Back in the day, it was only, I could raise like $1 million. Now it's 5 million. So for people on this call who are getting the no's, and by the way, I have a great friend who has 5 million in sales, Black woman, could not raise a Series A. She kept going to investors and she was like, look, I was on Shark Tank. I have amazing sales. I have all these customers who love my product. And they were like, we need to see more. We need it. That's always our, right? Like, oh, well, come back to us in 6 years when you've IPO'd and it's less risky. And then I'm interested. That's literally all I hear. And she ended up doing equity crowdfunding and raised, I think she's almost at the 5 million mark in less than a month. That's not everybody, but equity.
I want to interrupt you because I want you to send me that link. So I'm an angel investor too. So please send me that link.
Yes. Okay. Well, I'll just tell you what the company is. It's Curl Mix. It's Kim Lewis. She's amazing. She's on WeFunder. You should definitely check out her company. And I think what it gets me excited about 2021, as unfortunate as 2020 was, especially for women in the workforce, right? We saw 100%
job loss in December. Sorry,
From women.
on you. I remember when I read that, I just like poured out the coffee, poured in the vodka.
But here's the lemonade from the lemons. Here's the lemonade. Because now you can raise $5 million in equity crowdfunding. I believe that 2020 sucked, but 2021 is going to be the year of the woman, where women are going to say, you know what, working for these people was horrible. I couldn't be flexible. I couldn't do the things I needed to do. I was constantly harassed. I was constantly demoted, not promoted. I think we're going to see like the phoenix rising from the ashes in 2021, where women are going to start businesses like never before. And we finally have equity crowdfunding, which you can raise $5 million to get your business started, which is like unheard of when you're a woman trying to raise your first round. And anyways,
I'm just going to plug in there because we have seen the data showing that women are starting LLCs at a higher rate than ever before in history. And so we're actually in 2 weeks on June 9th, hosting a summit all about how to get your business up and off and how to save you 2 years and 200K in bad decisions. So come on and join us, or spread the word to all of the ladies who are launching their own companies, because exactly that point, I do completely agree with you. We're so excited because I think, yes, the pandemic kind of pulled us out of this, I hate this boss. I hate what I'm doing. I think I can go do it. I have people like Max and Asya to look to. And, Asya, you said it wasn't a pep talk. If I can do it, you can too. But I'll give you all the pep talk. You can. You just don't hustle for 24 hours a day. That's too much. But I think just kind of gearing us towards the closing end of this, as you guys sit where you're at right now and looking back to your entire experience, Max, I know Caribu has been around for a bit of time, has had phenomenal growth over the last year. Asya, you came out of George Floyd and said, we're going to change this and build First Boulevard, and have hit the ground running. Anything both good or bad that you would have changed about your perspective, your fundraising journey, or any other tips and tricks that you just want to share with this group right now? Asya, let's go to you first.
Yeah, I'm still thinking because I'm really bad at this sort of thing. I'm one of those, like, that saying, those who can do, those who can't teach. I'm one of those that just does. And then when someone needs to just observe me and then write it all down, because I can't teach. I'm like so bad at that. But like if someone reaches out to me, I'm always like, okay, let's do this. And we're going to call this person. We're going to do this person. So I'm really a connector. So what I would say is focus on what you can bring to the table. So if you focus on what your impact is going to be in every conversation you have. So what can you actually bring to the table? If you keep that as your central focus, I think that's going to be the main thing that you want to, kind of sort of keep in your front of mind. With that in mind, then there's really not much, like I'm not one of those folks that kind of goes back and tries to reassess the situation and think, gosh, if I had done this, then that would have happened. And so it's hard for me to kind of answer those questions, because like I don't like to go back to it, because there's a lot of things, ladies, that are really just out of our hands. And like Max said earlier perfectly, it's like this infrastructure wasn't built to support us, right? It was really built for somebody else. And so you just got to get in there, do the best you can, reach out to everybody, and kind of, if it doesn't work out with a specific investor, very often, like if you just sort of get into that negative cycle of beating yourself up about it, of like, oh shoot, like I just didn't nail that pitch, or I answered that question wrongly. Just remember, the person in front of you is quite fallible, just as you are. And it's a matter of like a certain chemistry that actually has to happen, where that person in front of you makes that click and says, yeah, I think she's going to make me a lot of money.
Yep.
And she's the one that can do this. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll build on that for you, having just listened deeply for everything you said, which is, I think, and building on what Max had said, I feel like the journey of the flight, right? You're going from Miami to San Francisco, and do you want to take the flight? But you can also walk, you can take a train, you can, hitchhike the whole way there. So with that, that is one route to take, and it is stacked against you. You still can do it, but just know you have now data. You have incredible women leaders here who have been successful, but they're even coming saying, hey, this is really hard. So kind of looking through, and I think what Max and Asya both said around knowing the resources available to you, you don't have to take a predatory term sheet. You might have to bootstrap a little. You might have to walk halfway and then hop a plane from Chicago to San Francisco, so setting yourself up, knowing those options, and really researching the investors, the capital partners that you want to go after. So you don't want to have 200 meetings. 26 meetings to get to what you need to, I think, is actually a much better use of your time.
And actually, Julie, I want to jump in. Like, even a bad term sheet is good, because you take that term sheet and you shop it around. So I say this to everybody. It's like, when people will come to me and say like, oh, I was talking to these people and they were like offering me a really bad term sheet, and I take it. You don't have to sign it. Take it. So get them to actually put it on paper. So now when you have conversations, and I always tell people, you are not raising until you have a term sheet in your hand. You're not raising. So before you get that term sheet in your hand, all you're doing is having conversations with people, getting to know different VCs, getting to know the firms, getting to know the portfolio companies there. I think someone asked a question like, should we reach out to portfolio companies? Absolutely, because you want to know how they interact with their portfolio companies. But I said, take that term sheet. Once you have it, that's when you say, hey, we have a term sheet and now we're raising. And then, it becomes one of those like, can I get a better term sheet?
It's a position of power. That's absolutely right. The other thing is, I think it's a lot like dating. Fundraising is unfortunately a lot like dating. And I remember as someone said, men are better at fundraising for startups because they're so used to rejection. And I was like, Bumble's been around for a while. Women have been rejected just as much, but it's so true. Like, I think that's the thing I wasn't prepared for, is just how awful it feels to constantly, because you can't take it personally, like you can't, but at the same time, people are investing in you. So it feels personal. But I've had to get, like, I've always had very thick skin, but I think it's way thicker now, where I'm just like, all right, that's your loss. Like, I think that's the other thing. Always kind of walk away from a meeting, first of all, graciously, right? Because you kind of want to show them what they missed out on. And I actually have a community email list that gets updates on Caribu. It's my oops, you effed up and didn't invest in Caribu list, where I remind investors like why we're so awesome and you missed out.
That's the subject line every time you send it.
Awesome.
Like, sorry, but walking away first of all from every no with grace, and two, thinking to yourself that's their loss, helps you survive a little bit.
I think that's an incredible note to end on as we hit the 9:45 mark here. Asya, Max, Cassie, thank you so much. I asked you all what was one word when you saw the data. I'm going to leave us with one word after this discussion: empowered. Thank you for empowering everybody here. Thank you for lifting your teams and your capital partners up. And Cassie, I cannot wait until next year when we start to see some of those data points turn positively in the favor of all women entrepreneurs. We will have a great recap here going out. I know the DocSend team will send that, and Ladies Who Launch will have this on our website, pulling out all of the incredible knowledge and tips. So if you couldn't write fast enough, do not fret. We'll have a recording. Please share with your friends, your fellow investors, to wake them up maybe to some of the experiences here, as well as to any other women entrepreneurs that are heading out and fundraising and finding their own capital partners. Thank you all. I wish you all the best long holiday weekend, and please don't work 24 hours.
Thank you guys so much for your time.
You all.
Bye all.
Bye.